Adrian Marshall, typically lived by a strict code of comfort and predictability. At just 30 years old, he was CEO of Marshall Capital, a global investment firm that managed billions in assets. Deals hinged on his every decision, and power came naturally to him in the polished boardrooms of the financial world. That evening in Layton City, though, the usual undercurrent of certainty vanished in one fell swoop. He'd come to finalize a high-stakes merger, the kind that would ripple through global markets. His driver dropped him off at a well-known five-star hotel, offering his typical farewell. "Enjoy your night, Mr. Marshall," before gliding away. Adrian, phone pressed to his ear, was already instructing a team in Singapore. Rain pelted the streets, the storm aggravating an already tense day. Expecting to march into a luxurious lobby, greet the staff who always recognized him, and settle into a plush penthouse suite, Adrian found something else entirely: yellow barricades around the entrance, a cluster of anxious hotel employees, and water trickling from the door. A hotel manager in a drenched blazer apologized profusely for a burst pipe that had flooded the main floors. Adrian blinked at the watery chaos beyond the barricades: soggy carpets, industrial fans whirring in futility. "This must be a misunderstanding," he said calmly, though tension knotted in his chest. "I have a reservation, a top suite." The manager's face flushed. "Sir, we can't let anyone in. It's not safe. We're relocating guests, but the entire area is overbooked thanks to that conference in town. We're trying to find you options, but it's proven impossible." With each word, the reality sank in. Adrian, the unstoppable executive who rarely faced a personal obstacle, had nowhere to sleep. A sense of unreality descended over him. The manager apologized again, explaining that retrieving his luggage wasn't possible either. The power was partially cut in the flooded lobby, making it too dangerous to traverse. Adrian was left on the wet sidewalk, rain soaking his tailored suit, the neon sign of the hotel flickering overhead. He tried calling an alternative five-star chain, and then another, but each politely informed him they were fully booked. His phone's battery, already battered from a day of unending calls, sank to 5%. He was alone, no immediate plan, his usual comforts stripped away. He retreated beneath a flickering street lamp, water dripping from his hair, scanning for cabs or rides. Usually, his driver stayed until he was safely checked in, but earlier Adrian had insisted the driver go home. He believed the hotel would handle everything. Now the city's drizzle intensified to a pounding downpour, traffic thinning as people hurried to shelter. In less than an hour, the man who orchestrated billion-dollar deals found himself as a stranded figure in the gloom, each droplet mocking his hubris. He tried calling a high-end contact, an old friend who owned a penthouse nearby, but no one answered. Another call to a plush boutique hotel? Full. Another to a CEO acquaintance with a large estate? He had left for Europe, unreachable. Each rejection hammered home how precariously reliant he was on the usual apparatus of wealth and connections. The phone beeped ominously. 3% battery. Rain sluiced down his neck, soaking into the collar of his once pristine shirt. Adrenaline mixed with frustration. "Unbelievable. One day without my staff, and I'm undone," he muttered wryly. The irony of it all weighed heavily. For a man whose time was measured in million-dollar increments, he now had all the time in the world to stand in the rain, quite literally out in the cold. Sometime after 10 p.m., with the downpour intensifying, Adrian realized he couldn't simply wait for a miracle. Shivering, he glanced around for any overhead covering. Down the block, a small, cozy-looking bookstore had a modest awning. Its sign was dim, presumably closed for the night. He jogged over, shoes splashing in puddles, lungs seizing from the cold. Arriving, he found partial shelter from the worst of the rain. He sank onto a slightly rickety bench that was likely more decorative than functional. He tried to contact his staff or any contact in Layton City who might help, but phone calls repeatedly dropped. The battery teetered on the brink, the phone blinking a final 2%. No luck. A surge of annoyance welled in him. Adrian Marshall, the unstoppable finance titan, was undone by a simple flood and a dead phone. Part of him recognized the comedic element in all this. Another part felt a touch of fear at how vulnerable he'd become. Thunder rumbled overhead, the street lamp flickering in the gloom, water dripping relentlessly from the edges of the awning. He was so absorbed in his predicament that he didn't notice the footsteps until a gentle voice broke through. "Are you all right?" He glanced up, blinking raindrops from his eyes. A petite figure in a bright yellow raincoat stood a few feet away, a reusable grocery bag cradled in her arms, shoulders damp from the deluge. Her black hair spilled from beneath the hood, glistening under the street lamp. His first instinct was to wave her off, but the warmth in her gaze made him hesitate. She saw a man slumped on a bench, soaked to the bone. Her question sounded more empathetic than a mere courtesy. "You look miserable," she continued quietly, stepping a bit closer. "Do you need help?" He forced a polite smile, though shame flared in him. "The hotel's flooded, no rooms anywhere else. My phone's dying. I'm fine. I'll figure something out." Even as he said it, his voice lacked conviction. She frowned, scanning his drenched attire. The worn lines around his eyes signaled exhaustion, an aura of defeat in his posture. "Everything's probably booked because of that big expo," she murmured. "I can't leave you out here in this rain. My apartment is just above the bookstore. The couch is free if you're comfortable with that." A swirl of contradictory emotions soared through him. Typically, he'd never accept a random stranger's couch, but he had no alternatives. The sincerity in her eyes, her unwavering calm, reassured him. That's very kind of you. I'm not sure." She cut him off with a small laugh. "Don't worry, I'm not luring you to a trap. You can leave in the morning when your phone's charged or if you manage to find a hotel, but at least you'll be warm." His pride warred with gratitude, but rational sense prevailed. He stood, nearly toppling from chilled legs, and forced a half smile. "Thank you. I'll make it up to you somehow." She nodded, urging him toward the narrow side entrance leading upstairs. Under her bright umbrella, they dashed into a dimly lit stairwell. Adrian's heart pounded, not from fear, but from an odd sense of fate. If this was how the night ended, at least it ended under the shelter of kindness. The short flight of wooden stairs led to a snug door with a whimsical sign reading, "Naomi's Loft. Please remove your worries before entering." Naomi fiddled with keys, pushing the door open to reveal a small living space that merged bohemian charm with everyday clutter. Exposed brick walls, a battered Persian rug, shelves of battered art books. A faint scent of lavender incense mingled with the dryness of old pages from the bookstore below. Adrian stepped in, dripping onto the wooden floor, cheeks flushing as he realized how thoroughly soaked he was. Naomi switched on a low lamp, revealing a modest living area. A burgundy couch, a small coffee table that bore a scattering of sketch pads, a laptop that blinked with half-finished design work. On the opposite side sat a compact kitchen area, a tiny hallway presumably leading to her bedroom and the bathroom. She set her grocery bag on the counter. "Welcome to my place," she said, voice tinged with mild embarrassment. "It's not a suite at the Marquette or anything, but it's home." Adrian forced a polite laugh, though warmth glowed in his chest. He found it cozier, more authentic than the sterile grandeur of a hotel lobby. "It's lovely," he said truthfully. Naomi rummaged in a cupboard, retrieving a stack of towels. "Bathroom's down that hall," she gestured. "Go ahead, dry off. I'll find you something to wear. I'm not sure if it'll fit, but better than soaking in that suit all night." He took the towels with gratitude, mumbling thanks. Once in the bathroom, he peeled off the dripping blazer, wincing at his reflection. He looked unrecognizable, hair plastered to his forehead, tie skewed, suit collar wrinkled. Normally he'd be furious at such disarray, but the day's events left him too exhausted to care. With the towels, he patted his hair, trying to salvage some dignity. Emerging moments later, in the baggy t-shirt and sweatpants Naomi provided, he glimpsed the reflection of them in the hallway mirror. She wore a plain hoodie and leggings, obviously rummaged from a hamper. She gave him a shy, friendly grin at his new attire. "At least you won't catch pneumonia," she said, then added, "I can hang your suit to dry if you want." He nodded, handing over the sodden garments, feeling an odd sense of domestic intimacy in this exchange. "Yes, thank you. I appreciate it." Naomi gestured to the couch. "Let me grab sheets and a blanket." She quickly returned with a folded comforter, rummaging for pillows. Adrian hovered uncertainly, offering to help, but she waved him off with a smile. In minutes, the couch was transformed into a passable bed, cozy by normal standards, though obviously far from the plush king size he'd normally occupy. She apologized that the couch might be short, but he simply shook his head. "You have no idea how much I appreciate this. Thank you for letting me crash here." She gave a half shrug. "We're all human. If I was stuck in the rain with no phone, I'd hope someone would do the same. Just try to get some rest." He lowered himself onto the makeshift bed, testing the cushions. The exhaustion of the day crashed over him. She flicked off the main lights, leaving a soft lamp. Then from across the room, she said quietly, "I'm Naomi, by the way, Naomi Liu." He offered a small, weary grin, lying back. "Adrian Marshall," he replied. Her lips twitched. The name probably meant little to her at the moment. "Nice to meet you, Adrian. Under less than ideal circumstances, but yeah, good night." He let out a breath, sinking into the couch's mild lumps. Oddly, it might be the best night's sleep he'd get, an unplanned refuge from a day gone wrong. Listening to the gentle rustle as Naomi disappeared into her bedroom, he felt a flicker of gratitude. In this humble loft above a bookstore, a billionaire found a piece of humanity he hadn't known he was missing. Adrian awoke to golden sunlight filtering through tall loft windows. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then memories of the previous night's fiasco rushed back. He sat up, noticing the couch, the bohemian decor. The aroma of coffee and toasted bread drifted from the kitchen area. His heart gave a curious flutter. Someone was making breakfast. For him, he rubbed his eyes, rising to find Naomi at the stove, wearing the same hoodie from last night, hair pulled into a messy bun. Intep, the small table by the window, had a couple of plates and mugs. She glanced over as he cleared his throat, cheeks flushing. "Morning. I hope I didn't wake you. Figured you could use some coffee?" He mustered a sheepish grin. "That smells fantastic. I usually have a cappuccino delivered to my office. This is more personal." She giggled softly. "Office cappuccinos, huh? Well, I only do drip coffee here. Sorry to disappoint." He laughed, crossing to the kitchen. The loft was so snug he practically stood beside her. "Not disappointed at all. I'm just grateful for anything that's not lukewarm hotel coffee." They settled at the table, each with a mug of coffee. She'd made simple scrambled eggs and toast, apologizing for the meager spread. He claimed it was the best breakfast he'd had in weeks. In truth, the unpretentious meal filled him with an unfamiliar contentment. "About last night," he began, sipping coffee, "I can't thank you enough for letting me crash. Normally I'd never impose, but you saved me from a truly miserable night." Naomi dismissed his concerns with a wave. "No problem. I've had my share of crummy luck. Once, I was stuck at a bus station overnight because of a missed connection. Some random person offered me a safe ride home, and that memory stuck. Paying it forward, you know?" He nodded, letting the sincerity of that statement warm him. He was used to manipulative angles, hidden agendas. Naomi's altruism felt downright alien. As they ate, conversation swirled. She asked if he'd be able to retrieve his luggage from the flooded hotel. He told her he'd find out soon, hopefully after staff cleaned the lobby. He kept his CEO of a global firm detail vague, simply referencing that he had important business. In turn, she opened up about her daily hustle, multiple freelance design jobs, sometimes working at the bookstore downstairs for extra cash. He listened intently, conscious of how different her reality was from his. Yet no condescension tinted his interest. Instead, he found himself genuinely impressed by her industrious spirit. After breakfast, Naomi offered to fetch his dried suit, which she'd hung in a corner near a small space heater. He tested the fabric, slightly wrinkled, but no longer drenched. "Thanks," he murmured, half laughing at the notion of wearing a suit in her cozy loft. "I might just change before heading out." She stepped aside, rummaging through a hamper for a basic iron. "It's not a top-of-the-line steamer, but it'll help those wrinkles a bit." She set it up on a rickety ironing board. Adrian, who'd never ironed anything personally, felt a surge of awkwardness. Reading his hesitation, Naomi teased, "You do know how to iron, right?" He coughed, smile wry. "In theory, yes. In practice, not so much." She ended up demonstrating, carefully pressing the suit jacket's lapels, pausing to make sure she didn't scald the expensive fabric. All the while, Adrian marveled at the domestic ease of the moment, two near strangers bridging a gap with small acts of care. When done, the suit looked presentable. Not perfect by his usual standards, but better than wet. He thanked her again, promising to repay her. She only shrugged. It's just ironing. Yet the tension in the air hinted that their bond was more personal than an act of neighborly courtesy. By mid-morning, her battered sedan was double parked near the electronics store where Adrian's assistant waited with a new charger. After a brief, somewhat comical exchange, Adrian trying to wave off the assistant's fussing, Naomi politely excused herself, but not before Adrian insisted on driving her home, or at least buying her lunch. She initially declined, not wanting to impose, but his earnestness won out. They ended up at a quiet cafe near a local art district, a place Naomi sometimes visited for brunch. Adrian took in the minimalist decor, the chalkboard specials, the hum of creative types on laptops. It felt eons away from the exclusive power lunch spots he normally patronized. Seated by a window, they pored over a menu of artisanal sandwiches and soups. Naomi recommended a tomato basil soup. Adrian teased, "At least this time I won't be drenched," referencing the watery fiasco from the night before. She giggled, the tension between them dissolving into an easy rapport. As they ate, they delved deeper into each other's backgrounds. She described the small town she'd grown up in, how she discovered a love for sketching on long bus rides, eventually blossoming into a desire to design brand identities. He, still vague about his exact net worth, spoke of forging a career in finance, climbing ranks, eventually forming his own firm. He omitted that it was worth billions, focusing on the passion for orchestrating deals that shaped entire industries. Lunch extended into a walk through the art district, weaving between galleries and street murals. She pointed out a piece by a local sculptor she admired, while he admitted he rarely had time to appreciate art unless it was in the corporate lobbies he'd funded. She teased him for referencing corporate lobbies, joking about how investment aesthetics might differ from personal artistry. He found her irreverence refreshing. They paused at a small park, finding a bench beneath a large oak. The rain from the night before had cleansed the air, leaving the sky bright and crisp. A swirl of leaves danced in a light breeze. Adrian realized how seldom he simply sat on a public bench with no immediate agenda. "So, what's your next move?" she asked, picking at a chipped piece of paint on the bench's armrest. "You found a hotel, right?" He nodded. "Yes, the staff found a suite at a different five-star place for me. My business obligations wrap up tomorrow. Then I'll fly home." He paused, eyes flicking over her face. "But I'd like to keep in touch, to see you again." Her pulse quickened. She'd grown to enjoy his presence more than she expected. "I'd like that," she said quietly. He offered a small grin. "I can show you my world if you ever visit. But I warn you, it's a bit stuffy. Boardrooms and suits. Might not be as creative as your art loft." She returned his smile, eyes alight. "I'm not afraid of boardrooms. Might give me new design inspiration." They parted at dusk, exchanging phone numbers properly this time. Adrian squeezed her hand in gratitude, neither explicitly calling it a date, but both sensing a deeper connection had ignited. Back at the newly assigned luxury hotel suite that evening, Adrian stared at the city lights. His phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, but he found himself ignoring them, rereading text threads with Naomi. A quiet warmth filled him, an echo of that intangible sense he discovered in her cozy loft. Before bed, he texted, "Thanks for spending the day with me. I didn't expect to enjoy it so much." She promptly replied, "Me neither, but I'm glad we did. Sleep well, billionaire or not." He froze at that last phrase. Had she gleaned he was more than just a mid-level finance guy? Possibly. She'd alluded to his suits, his driver calling him Mr. Marshall, the scale of his presence. Yet she still treated him with unaffected sincerity. The sense of relief was immense. The next morning, his schedule demanded a few final investor meetings. He performed them with the typical efficiency, but in every lull, his mind drifted to Naomi. He found himself daydreaming about her design work. He wanted to sponsor her or open doors for her, but he recognized that might compromise the authenticity of their budding relationship. After the last meeting, he called her spontaneously, asking if she'd show him her design portfolio. She sounded flustered but excited. They met at a small coffee shop near her loft. Over cappuccinos, she produced a battered laptop, flipping through brand identities she'd crafted for local businesses, illustrations for children's books, concept sketches for a potential digital magazine. Adrian, used to analyzing the financial viability of every proposition, found himself moved by the raw creativity and emotional resonance in her work. "This is incredible," he murmured. "You have real talent." She gave a grateful grin, cheeks flushing. "I'm just trying to make ends meet, but it's what I love doing." He felt an urge to reveal that he could, in a snap, fund a design studio for her. But he bit it back. He didn't want to overshadow her independence or create a dynamic of rich patron, struggling artist. Instead, he praised her skill, offering subtle suggestions about networking. The day ended with them strolling by the waterfront, exchanging lighter banter about future possibilities. He told her, "If you ever want a bigger stage for your designs, there's a world out there that needs your creativity." She teased him about sounding like a motivational poster, and he chuckled, letting their comfortable synergy envelop them. Time in Layton City concluded for Adrian, and he flew back to his main headquarters. The memory of Naomi's parted smile at the airport gate lingered in his mind. She'd come to see him off, offering a small wave, as though reaffirming they'd stay connected despite the distance. In the following weeks, he plunged back into the rigors of Marshall Capital. Multi-continent calls, legal negotiations, philanthropic committees. Yet, amid the swirl of corporate life, a new undercurrent existed. Frequent texts and calls with Naomi. They shared daily anecdotes, she about new design gigs or local gallery openings, he about implementing subtle changes in his work environment, letting employees have more creative autonomy. He felt an odd synergy. Her creative vantage point inspired him to approach deals with more empathy. Meanwhile, she gleaned a taste of big finance from his stories, gleaning potential design angles for future business clients. They started bridging each other's worlds, weaving an unexpected tapestry of artistry and corporate acumen. One Friday evening, weeks after he left, Naomi texted him a casual question. "If I showed up in your city tomorrow, would you have time to show me around?" Adrian's heart leapt. He'd half joked about inviting her, but seeing it become real thrilled him. He rearranged a chunk of his schedule, replying with an enthusiastic "Usfristmimes. Absolutely. I'll pick you up at the station." She arrived on a Saturday morning, stepping off a train with a small suitcase. He recognized her instantly in the crowd, the same open smile, though overshadowed by mild nerves at the bustling metropolis. He offered a welcome hug, ignoring discreet glances from staff who recognized their boss with an unknown woman. She teased him for the flurry of polished employees lurking in the station, and he teased her for traveling slow when she could have hopped a plane. She insisted trains gave her better inspiration time, prompting him to grin. That weekend, he showed her the city's highlights, but more intimately, his corner offices, the philanthropic branch of his empire, even letting her see some of the design teams at Marshall Capital who worked on brand campaigns. She admired the scale, but remained unwavering in her perspective. It was mesmerizing, but also validating her choice to remain an independent designer, forging a more personal approach. She spent a night in his penthouse, dwarfed by the panoramic cityscape from 50 floors up. He worried she'd find it cold, but her wide-eyed wonder at the skyline found a parallel in his earlier wonder at her bohemian loft. They snuggled on his wide leather couch, reminiscent of her narrower burgundy couch, sharing whispered jokes about the difference in decor. That night, in the hush of the vast living space, they found an intimacy that transcended mere differences in square footage. Adrian's driver occasionally ferried them around the city during her visit. Naomi, unaccustomed to being chauffeured, teased him about feeling like a celebrity. He returned a wry grin, remarking how it was second nature for him. Yet, in the back seat of that luxurious town car, they faced small tensions. She worried about seeming out of place. He worried about overshadowing her independence. In small ways, they navigated that friction. She insisted on paying for lunch at a modest cafe once, ignoring his half-protests. He realized how essential it was to let her maintain autonomy. Their dynamic shaped itself into an interplay of mutual respect, each trying not to overshadow the other with their lifestyle. One evening, he spontaneously arranged a scenic drive to a lakeside near the city's outskirts, wanting to give her a break from skyscrapers. The driver dropped them off at a small boathouse where Adrian had set up a private dinner under strings of fairy lights. She gasped at the romantic gesture. He explained it was just a quiet spot he sometimes used to think, disclaiming that it wasn't some massive production. They ate a simple meal and afterward sat by the water's edge. She spoke about how meeting him had broadened her sense of what success could look like. He confided that discovering her worldview helped him see how lonely and insular his life had been. They exchanged soft kisses under starlight, forging a memory that neither would soon forget. Inevitably, Naomi had to return to her city, resuming her local design gigs. Adrian turned to facing urgent expansions at Marshall Capital, traveling internationally to finalize acquisitions. In the swirl of the next month, phone calls and video chats became their lifeline. Some days they'd only manage a few texts. Others they'd talk late into the night about everything from marketing design to philanthropic collaborations. The distance tested them. She occasionally felt overshadowed by his intense schedule, while he wrestled with frustration whenever emergent crises stole the time he wanted to spend with her. Yet neither wanted to let go. The memory of that meltdown night in the rain and the subsequent generosity that bound them reminded them that they had found something special. In a surprising twist, he found an excuse to attend a mid-level investor conference back in Layton City. He booked a suite in a top hotel this time, unflooded, but as soon as he arrived, he texted Naomi, half joking that if the hotel kicked him out again, he'd crash on her couch. She teased back that her new couch was bigger than the old burgundy one, so he'd be more comfortable. They ended up spending evenings at her loft anyway, despite his fancy suite. A comedic sense of déjà vu overcame him as he hung his suit on the same corner near the heater she used months before. She prepared a cozy dinner of pasta, and they laughed at how humble it was compared to the caviar-laced corporate dinners he might have attended otherwise. He cherished the authenticity. No staff scurrying about, no sense of performance. Just him and Naomi in her snug loft, the bookstore's faint smell of pages drifting through the floorboards. This synergy of big money and bohemian artistry felt improbable, yet deeply comforting. As weeks folded into months, Adrian realized he wanted Naomi in his future, permanently. Her easy acceptance of him, minus the empire or the superficial trappings, reminded him that wealth was meaningless if he had no one to share genuine moments with. He started weaving her feedback into philanthropic decisions, commissioning her designs for small projects. She found fresh exposure from his circles, though he was careful not to overshadow her name with his. Meanwhile, she expanded her portfolio, landing more stable contracts. In a heartfelt conversation, she admitted how her newfound confidence stemmed partly from his unwavering support. She joked, "I used to do all-nighters for a $50 design gig. Now I'm closing $500 deals, and it feels luxurious." He teased her back, pointing out that soon she'd be charging $5,000. She teased him about investing in Naomi Inc. Beneath the banter, a reverential sense of partnership formed. They discovered a shared moral compass. He championed honest investment that bolstered communities. She championed design that uplifted small businesses. They each believed in bettering the world in their own realms. However, with rumors swirling about Adrian's personal life, his PR advisors cautioned him that the tabloids might seize on any commoner girlfriend angle. Naomi felt uneasy, suspecting she might become a headline. He assured her he'd shield her from intrusive press, wanting her to remain free from that circus. Still, tension surfaced. She insisted on not losing her identity or being rebranded as Adrian Marshall's fiancé. He recognized the precarious tightrope. Yet every time they spent a day together, be it hiking near a local lake or watching old films in her living room, he felt sure that the ephemeral clamor of tabloids paled next to the real bond they had forged. One winter evening, after finalizing a lucrative European merger, Adrian found himself in a swirling haze of congratulatory messages. Yet none of them mattered as much as Naomi. He realized he wanted her to share in every success, and more importantly, to anchor him when deals overshadowed reality. He wanted to share daily life with her. He hopped a flight to her city, this time no fiasco, no meltdown. He arrived unannounced at her loft, carrying a bouquet of hand-picked wildflowers, with some help from a local florist. She opened the door, wearing paint-stained overalls, eyes wide with delight. He apologized for showing up unannounced. She beamed, letting him in, not minding her messy appearance. He told her he'd rather see her in paint-splattered clothes than any over-polished cocktail dress required by society events. They spent that evening simply curled on her couch, the new one, sipping hot chocolate, talking about the future. She admitted an interest in possibly moving to his city if it meant they could build a shared life, but only if she could maintain her design independence. He wholeheartedly agreed, offering a small corner of his corporate tower for a personal studio if she wanted it. She half laughed, half teared at his support. He had a bold plan: invite her to the next philanthropic dinner hosted by Marshall Capital, introducing her to the foundation side of his business. She hesitated, but recognized it might be a chance to see his philanthropic heart in action. The event turned into a minor triumph. She mingled with board members and donors, gracefully bridging the gap between designing business cards for local cafes and discussing multi-million-dollar philanthropic projects with corporate bigwigs. Adrian watched her from afar, enthralled by how seamlessly she navigated the conversation, no trace of sycophancy or intimidation. The board likewise found her sincerity refreshing. Some teased him, "When do we get to see a ring on her finger?" He blushed, deflecting, but the thought loomed large in his mind. On a crisp spring evening, Adrian took Naomi to a quiet bistro to celebrate the closure of an intense quarter at Marshall Capital. The bistro's ambiance was intimate: soft jazz playing, candlelit tables, the chatter of subdued patrons. He'd reserved a corner spot with a view of twinkling city lights through a large window. The meal started with light banter, but an undercurrent of significance lingered. She wore a simple, elegant navy dress, hair loosely pinned. He recognized her slight tension, perhaps suspecting the dinner might lead to a bigger revelation. He, too, felt the swirl of excitement and nerves. Over the main course, salmon for her, lamb for him, he found himself setting down his fork, heart hammering. "Naomi," he began quietly, "I've never felt so certain about wanting someone in my life as I do with you. You took me in, quite literally, when I was lost in the rain. You didn't care about my money or my position, just that I was a person in need. You've shown me a side of life I nearly forgot." She swallowed hard, tears brimming. "Adrian," he reached into his suit pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. Her breath caught, a hand flying to her mouth. "I want us to share a future, co-create it. Will you marry me?" he asked, voice thick with emotion. He opened the box, revealing a tasteful diamond ring, not gaudy but exquisitely cut, reflecting the candlelight. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She laughed softly, watery with relief. "Yes," she whispered, hardly able to speak. "1,000 times yes." Soft applause from a nearby table murmured through the bistro. He slipped the ring onto her finger, holding her trembling hand. In that moment, the entire journey, the flooded hotel, the battered sedan, the borrowed sweatpants, the countless calls bridging cities, crystallized into a vow. They sealed it with a tender kiss, oblivious to the gentle applause from a few onlookers. In the days following their engagement, Naomi experienced a swirl of excitement and mild trepidation. The press inevitably caught wind of Adrian's personal life, but he shielded her from the brunt, releasing only a minimal statement about being engaged to a private citizen. She found it surreal, yet Adrian's unwavering support reassured her. They decided to keep her loft for a while. She cherished its cozy, creative vibe. Meanwhile, he had his penthouse. They alternated living in each place, discovering a dynamic synergy, some weeks in high-rise sophistication, other weeks among her bohemian sprawl of paint tubes and design sketches. They teased each other about whose kitchen was better, her cramped stove or his state-of-the-art chef's range. Naomi soon discovered fresh demand for her design services once word spread that she was engaged to Adrian. She initially balked, refusing to sign deals purely for name-dropping. Instead, she curated clients who resonated with her style. Adrian admired her ethical stance. She refused shortcuts, forging her career on merit, not on the billionaire fiancé's coattails. Adrian, for his part, found new meaning in philanthropic expansions. He consulted Naomi on creative ways to support small arts communities. They formed a joint charitable fund focusing on local design grants, bridging his capital with her insight into grassroots artistic needs. The synergy they fostered spilled into each corner of their lives, a testament to how their hearts and minds aligned. Eventually, months after the proposal, they planned a modest wedding. Despite Adrian's resources, they opted for a small ceremony at a historic library's garden. Family, close friends, and a few of Adrian's key associates were invited. The bookstore owner from Naomi's building came, as did a smattering of staff from Marshall Capital. The officiant referenced how a stormy night and a locked-out hotel created a brand new future, drawing affectionate laughs. Naomi, radiant in a simple white gown, walked down a short aisle to meet Adrian, dashing yet visibly emotional in a crisp suit. They exchanged heartfelt vows that alluded to humility, authenticity, and the power of shared compassion. With quiet tears and broad smiles, they said, "I do," sealing the union in front of the people who understood how improbable and miraculous their love story was. At the reception, a playful highlight featured a small couch in a corner, reminiscent of the burgundy one Naomi once had. The family teased them, calling it the good luck couch. Adrian pretended to nap on it for a comical photo op, Naomi leaning over him with a grin. Everyone roared with laughter. After the wedding, they spent a short honeymoon in a tranquil lakeside cabin. No extravagant world tour, they agreed, just a peaceful retreat. They fished, canoed, read books by a fireplace. Freed from the hustle of daily demands, they reveled in the simple joys. Cooking together, taking slow walks, dreaming about the future. Returning home, they continued bridging their worlds, each day unveiling fresh synergy. Naomi established a small design studio in a separate floor of Adrian's building, ironically near a branch of Marshall Capital. She hired 2 fellow designers, forging a truly collaborative environment. Adrian found new fulfillment in discovering how their marriage could expand philanthropic goals, unleashing more creative or community-oriented projects. One late evening, after a tiresome day, they found themselves at Naomi's loft, the place that once rescued Adrian from a humiliating night. Sipping tea on that new couch, now thoroughly theirs, they recounted how far they'd come. The locked-out fiasco seemed both comical and fated. Adrian trailed his fingers along the ring on her hand, a soft smile playing on his face. "You know," he murmured, "I never thought I'd be thankful for a burst pipe." Naomi giggled, leaning into his shoulder. "Me neither, but I guess sometimes life has to knock us out of our comfort zone to find what really matters." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You matter," he whispered. She squeezed his hand in response. Outside, a light drizzle fell, a gentle echo of the storm that started it all. But this time, they were warm, secure, together. And so it was that a billionaire, accustomed to opulence, discovered a far richer treasure in the kindness of one woman's couch, her art-strewn loft, and the sincerity of her heart. They built a life anchored by a single night's improbable rescue, learning that sometimes the greatest wealth isn't measured in the zeros on a bank statement, but in the open arms of a stranger who becomes family.